Welcome to the Art of Procurement podcast with your host, Philip Eidson. Here, thought leaders share the trends, strategies, and tactics that you can use to elevate the role of procurement and your career.
Hi there, and welcome to the Art of Procurement Friday show. So it's been a really exciting start to the year on the show, and I really can't wait to share with you a number of the episodes that I have either scheduled or that are in post-production. But before I go into the show today, there is just a couple of things I want to share. So first of all, I want to let you know that I recently published a new report. It's called the 21 Tips to Help Secure Your Dream Procurement Job. So the report is really a summary of the tips and the tricks that cover the entire job search process, really. It's compiled from Art of Procurement interviews that I've had with thought leaders in the space. If you want to get a copy of the report, then just go to artofprocurement.com/21tips. The second one I wanted to talk about today is that, as you can probably imagine, a lot of time gets invested in each Art of Procurement show, and in fact, it's really more than just me. I have a team behind the scenes that supports the production and the promotion and really putting together the show every week. So certainly just more than me behind the scenes. And to be open and honest, I'm really looking at ways that I can, help the show self-fund itself so that I'm able to dedicate more time to finding the quality content, less time on working on some of the technical details behind the scene, which, because I'm no expert, ends up taking me a lot of time. So if I can get other people to do that who know that, and that's what they do best, then I can focus a lot more of my efforts on really bringing some great content to the show. So if you do value the content that we produce here at Art of Procurement, I do have a way that you can help, and it actually doesn't cost you a penny. All you have to do is that whenever you shop at Amazon, just go to artofprocurement.com/Amazon. What that does is that link actually will take you straight to the Amazon homepage, and you get all the same prices as you always would. But Art of Procurement then gets a small thank you from Amazon just for sending you their way. So that's artofprocurement.com/Amazon just whenever you are ready to buy anything on Amazon. That would be truly appreciated because, as I say, that will help then invest in more resources to really support the production of the Art of Procurement show. Okay, there was one other last point, and this is a little bit more inside baseball, as I've learned to say here in the States. So when I set up the Art of Procurement, one of the fundamental tenets of the show was to have really great audio quality. And the best way to do that on a consistent basis is to record using Skype. Skype can also be, just if you don't get lucky with your internet connection, the sound is sometimes a little bit garbly. But I'd say on a consistent basis, Skype is far more effective than recording, just over a regular phone call, for example. Well, on Tuesday's show, I recorded it with Skype video rather than just Skype audio. The result is that the audio quality in Tuesday's show wasn't as consistent as I would have liked. I hope that you were still able to take a lot of actionable content from what the guest, and it was Bob Broadwell, the guest this week, shared. However, what I did want to say is that in future, I'm going to make sure that until I know that the audio quality is there using video Skype, I'm just going to stick with the audio Skype. I really just throw that in there because I wanted you to understand a little bit behind why the quality wasn't as consistent from an audio perspective on Tuesday than what you've come to expect from the Art of Procurement. Okay, so with all that being said, let's go straight into the show. And in today's show, what I'd like to do is to follow up on the conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago with Tim Jones, the head of strategic sourcing at Google. If you didn't hear the show, then I would highly recommend it. It's actually the fastest downloaded show that we've had so far on the Art of Procurement, and you can listen just by going to artofprocurement.com/Google. So if you recall, Tim talked about the journey that Google took to become a trusted advisor, and that the first step of that journey was really to try and take the administrative and transactional work out of the hands of the strategic members of his team so that they could focus solely on building stakeholder relationships. What I wanted to do today was to share how you can go about doing that at your company. So as a little background, This is actually something, I've been doing this kind of work for almost 10 years now, which is kind of scary when I look back and think about it. I've been doing it both internally, so moving work to a shared service center, and also externally, both on the practitioner and on the client side. And in fact, today, I actually work with clients at a couple of companies, Procure Change and Advanced Purchasing Dynamics, to help procurement leaders transition out what you'd consider non-value added work. And that's both on the direct procurement and indirect procurement side. So really the first question is, why would you want to do this? And back in the recession, I'd say that companies were doing this mainly to reduce cost. Today, while reduction of cost from moving resources or moving tasks from high cost resources to lower cost resources is definitely a benefit, it's really all about talent retention and increasing the value that your team creates. Okay, so when you're first looking at this, where do you start? Well, look at the role of your buyer, your sourcing consultant, your sourcing manager, whatever role it is that you want to free up time in. When you look at that role, then write out all the different discrete activities and tasks that make up that role. So, here are some examples. It can be collecting and analyzing market intelligence. It can be writing RFPs, building stakeholder relationships. Perhaps your team is spending a lot of time resolving supplier payment issues. There's a lot of the internal work that goes on to collect supplier and contract information that's used for internal reporting requirements. Negotiations is another. Obviously, the list goes on. When you look at each one of those activities, you can then plot them on a graph. So think of using the x-axis to show the complexity of each one of those tasks and or activities, and then the y-axis to look at the value that you derive from performing each task. You'll then pretty easily be able to plot and view on a graph which activities create value, which are merely administrative. Once you have that in front of you, and if you picture kind of the graph with a bunch of dots on it for each task, oftentimes it ends up, when you connect them, it looks like a curve, and it goes, from the bottom left, curves upwards to the top right. You can then use that to determine which of the activities would form the basis of a pilot program, for example. Those in that lower left quadrant, which are the low value and low complexity activities. I would really recommend you start with those activities, low value, low complexity, and also those that have few, if any, interdependencies. So they're not reliant on other people or other tasks or activities. They can be performed in isolation of each other. Now you have the tasks, you can then build a process map that really spells out how each one of those tasks can be performed. Doesn't have to be perfect out of the gate, but you definitely need something. It's really important to have a playbook. And it can be a living and breathing document, so you can adjust it as you learn, as other people start doing the tasks. Because what you find is that it's really hard to write on paper what people do every day, because it's just something that's natural to them. So it doesn't have to be 100% right from the get-go. It's just important to have something out there. With a process map, you're now ready to transition the activities. So the next question is, where would you transition the activities to? And there's a whole host of factors that you've got to consider to determine which is the right approach for your company. It's factors that are internal to your company, but also they're external. So government regulation, for example, on outsourcing. A bunch of stuff that there's just too much to go into detail on this show. And, honestly, I think it's something that I look into doing in a future show. But needless to say, you broadly speaking have three different choices. So you can manage it within your team. So what that means? Well, you can hand off the low value, low complexity tasks to more junior team members. That's actually a really good way of providing a junior level or an introductory role into your team. Perhaps colleagues who have just graduated from college, they're in purchasing or procurement for the first time. It's a good introduction to the profession, and also provides a great first step on a ladder of progression within your organization. The second option is to build or lever a shared service center. This is really only an option if you have scale. You can do a shared service center. It can be onshore or it can be an offshore model, depending on how much, whether you're looking at this as a true cost saving or whether you're still wanting a team that's close to you. So as an example, just under 10 years ago, I actually helped lead the transition of activities like this to an internal but an offshore shared service center that my company had set up in India. In the course of doing this, I actually ended up living in India for a year to facilitate the transition. It's a really great option if you have scale, as I mentioned. An example, when I did it internally, we were a manufacturing company of about $15 billion in revenue. So we had the scale to build a team of over 100 procurement professionals in our offshore shared service center to perform these tasks and activities. The third option is to outsource the tasks. And again, this can be an onshore model or it can be an offshore model. There's now a bunch of specialist companies out there who already have teams ready and able and raring to go. So it's a good choice if you don't have the scale to build an internal shared service team, or just strategically, it may be something that you don't want to do. And that was the case, for example, in Google. Now you have your partner on board, you've decided whether you're going to go an internal or external model. I always recommend to clients that you start small. So select a small number of low complexity, low value tasks and just use that as a pilot program. Only really when the model's proven should you then consider transitioning more. The great thing with this model is you can transition then from it being low value, low complexity administrative tasks. Teams can take a lot more value-added work, a lot of data mining, market intelligence, analytics. All that is possible, but start small, get comfortable, transition tasks over time, rather than just go out there from day one and try and do some of the more complex tasks, because that's really going to fail, or at least it's got a real high probability of failing. At this point, things are going well, you've transitioned tasks, you can then use that map and the tasks that you plotted as the guide to start figuring out what you should start transitioning more. What's wave 2 look like, what's wave 3 look like, wave 4, etc., etc. The other thing I recommend is that you should really designate an owner internally who is responsible for a program such as this. It's really important that you have a point person. It's only going to succeed with strong change management. You need advocates within your own team, and you really need a consistent governance program. And that's true whether it's internal or external. Obviously, it becomes a little bit more important when you're dealing externally because there's contractual issues at stake. But strong change, strong governance, strong program management are key, whether it's internal or external. One of the mistakes that companies will often do in a program like this is putting in place somebody who maybe a strong purchasing or procurement person, but doesn't have the ability necessarily to manage a program that can be fairly complex. So a lot of thought really does have to go into who that point person is going to be. Right now, the biggest benefit of this kind of program is actually concerning talent retention. And I mentioned earlier the three: talent, increasing value, and cutting cost. But talent is really a problem right now in procurement. We've discussed in a few shows ago the state of the procurement job market and how it really is on the side of the candidate and the employee. So as a result, more companies are getting really serious about talent retention. Now, studies are showing that high-performing employees are really leaving their companies not necessarily because of salary, but because of their work environment. That's where a program like this is really key right now, because it allows companies to take that non-desirable work off the plates of the high performers and the well-paid strategic employees, so that they can do work that they enjoy. The benefit of that, obviously the knock-on benefit, is that these employees now are able to create far more value as well to the organization because they're doing more strategic, higher valued activities and tasks, and that they're engaged because they're doing work they enjoy. So this kind of program really pays for itself pretty easily. It's really a big opportunity for you if you're able to go and implement a program such as this. Okay, well, that's all for another Friday show. Show notes and a transcript can be found at artofprocurement.com/17. I'll also just have a picture of the curve chart that I talked about, because that's just help you visualize what it is that I'm talking about. For more information on how to go about transitioning non-value added activities away from the strategic teams that you have, then please give me a shout. I love talking about this subject. My contact details, again, they're going to be in the show notes at artofprocurement.com/17. All right. Well, thanks a lot for your time today. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you again next week.